Picture two men on the same pitch. One is 17 years old, his voice has barely broken, and in a few minutes he is going to faint into a teammate's arms. The other is 42, old enough to be the boy's father, grey in his beard, a dance already waiting in his legs. Neither of them is really supposed to be here. And both of them are about to do the one thing the World Cup remembers forever. Both of them score. This is the story of the youngest and the oldest goal scorers in the history of the World Cup. The boys who arrived too soon, and the men who simply refused to leave. It begins, the way so much of football does, with a teenager from Brazil. The summer of 1958, a skinny boy called Edson Arantes do Nascimento, the world would soon learn to call him Pele, arrives in Sweden carrying a knee injury and a nation that does not yet even know his name. He had not come from football's bright places. He grew up poor in the town of Bauru, so poor that as a boy he stuffed a sock with newspaper and tied it with string when he could not afford a ball, and shined shoes for a few coins. Now, at 17, he was carrying the hopes of an entire country that had never once won this trophy. And he was injured and homesick and unsure he would even get onto the field. He misses the first two games. The story goes that he offered to go home rather than take up a place he couldn't fill. His teammates wouldn't hear of it. Play the boy, they told the coach, so finally they did. In the quarter-final against Wales, the 17-year-old does something a boy should not be able to do. In a crowded box, his back to goal, he takes the ball down, hooks it over a defender's head, spins, and finishes in a single motion. He is 17 years and 239 days old, and to this day, no one younger has ever scored at a World Cup. He remains the only human being ever to find the net in the tournament before his 18th birthday, and he was only getting started. A hat-trick against France in the semi-final from a boy who could not legally do most grown-up things back home. Then two more in the final itself against the hosts in front of a stunned Swedish crowd. One of them an outrageous chip over a grown defender's head that no teenager had any right to even attempt. When the whistle blew on a 5-2 win and Brazil had their first ever world title, the boy sank to the grass, completely overcome, and had to be revived by his teammate Garrincha. He woke up a world champion, 17 years old and weeping. Pele pushed open a door that day, but it has barely opened since. The players who come next are not boys of 17, they are 18. Spain's Gavi, gliding through Costa Rica in 2022. England's Michael Owen in 1998, whose goal announced a teenager to the entire planet. He collected the ball inside his own half against Argentina, and he ran past one man, past another, and before the defense could lay a hand on him, he had lashed it high into the far corner. 18 years old and utterly without fear. Because that is the strange gift of the very young. They do not yet know what is supposed to be impossible. And then there is Mexico's Manuel Rosas, away back in the very first World Cup of 1930. His story is its own curiosity. The 18-year-old didn't only score in that tournament, earlier in it, he had put the ball through his own net for the very first own goal in World Cup history. The youngest scorers have always lived right on that knife edge between glory and disaster. That, too, is youth. And there is one more name you already know. In 2018, a 19-year-old in a France shirt scored in a World Cup final. The first teenager to do that since Pele himself, 60 years before. His name was Kylian Mbappé. 4 years later, he would score a hat-trick in another final. The door Pele pushed open in Sweden, Mbappé walked through in Moscow. And he is still walking through it now, in this very tournament. But for every boy who arrives too soon, there is a man who simply will not go. So turn the hourglass over. At the other end of football's long day stand the oldest goal scorers the World Cup has ever seen. And one of them stands far, far above all the rest. Roger Milla was no ordinary veteran. Years earlier, he had been crowned African Footballer of the Year after a long career grinding through the leagues of France. But by the end of the 1980s, the wider world had quietly forgotten him. He had already retired from the national team, said his goodbyes, and gone to live out his football on the sun-bleached island of Réunion in the Indian Ocean, far from the noise of it all. He was 38 years old. Then the phone rang, not from a coach, from a president. Paul Biya, the head of state of Cameroon, personally asked Milla to come back for the 1990 World Cup. You do not say no to that call. What happened next became legend. He did not even start. He came off the bench, again and again, an old man sent on to rescue games, and again he delivered. 4 goals in that one tournament, and he finished each of them exactly the same way. A shuffle to the corner flag, a swing of the hips, the Makossa dance that half the planet would soon be trying to copy. There was the unforgettable night against Colombia. Their flamboyant goalkeeper, René Higuita, dribbled casually out of his own penalty area, the way he loved to do, and the 38-year-old pounced, robbed him clean, and rolled the ball into the empty net. Cameroon won in extra time. They became the first African nation ever to reach a World Cup quarter-final, and then pushed mighty England all the way to extra time before finally falling 3-2. A grandfather, dancing at a corner flag, had changed the way the entire world saw African football. And that should have been the perfect ending. It wasn't. 4 years later in the United States, Milla came back one more time, older, slower, but still there. And at 42 years and 39 days old, he scored against Russia. Stop and think about that. No one over the age of 40 has ever scored at a World Cup. Not before him, and not once since. The very youngest record in the book belongs to Pele. The entire far end of the table belongs alone to Roger Milla. Behind him stands a gallery of men who refused the calendar. Portugal's Pepe climbing to head one in at 39 in 2022. Mexico's Cuauhtémoc Blanco, who in 2010 did not sprint past defenders at all, he hopped between them, that famous little 2-footed bunny hop, the ball trapped between his feet, and scored at 37. And Cristiano Ronaldo, who buried a penalty against Ghana in 2022 at 37, and who, astonishingly, is back yet again in 2026, still chasing the light, still refusing the calendar's verdict. And look closely, and you will still see Milla everywhere. Every time a modern superstar slides to the corner flag and dances after scoring, they are quoting a Cameroonian grandfather from 1990, most of them without even knowing it. The young give us the future, the old give us the memory that never fades. And here is the detail that ties the whole story together in a single knot. Go back to that summer in Sweden, in 1958, Pelé's summer, the boys' summer. In the very same tournament, on the very same fields, a 37-year-old Swede named Gunnar Gren scored in the semi-final. One World Cup. A 17-year-old and a 37-year-old, both finding the net under the same sky, in the same handful of weeks. The very first goal of one great story, and nearly the last of another, playing out side by side. Because that is what these records truly are, not numbers in a table, they are the two ends of one single human story. The boy who is far too young to understand what he has done, and faints from the sheer joy of it. And the man who is far too old to still be out there at all, and dances anyway. Because he, better than anyone alive, knows exactly how rare and how fleeting all of this really is. The World Cup gives us both. It always has, and it always will. Somewhere out there, right now, there is a teenager lacing his boots who will one day chase Pelé's ghost. And a quiet veteran, written off by everyone who still dreams of Milla's. And when they finally score, against all of it, we will remember them forever too. If you love these stories, the ones the record books only hint at, subscribe and stay with us as we keep bringing you these stories.